Welcome to Honeybee, real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. Have you ever opened your heart to someone, only to be met with those dreaded words? I think we should just be friends. Yeah, that happened to me. And today, I'll tell you everything about it. My name's Raymond. I met Gabriella on my very first day working as an intern at a prestigious law firm. This wasn't just any firm. It was one of the most respected in the city. Landing that internship had cost me endless effort, late nights of preparation, and constant self-discipline. I knew from the moment I walked in that the future of my career might depend on how I performed here. If I made the right impression, there was a strong chance they'd keep me on permanently. That thought alone was enough to keep me glued to my desk, focused on nothing but work. I didn't even know her name the first time I noticed her. She came in casually, carrying a case file, and handed it to the front desk where I was seated. And in that split second, I caught myself thinking, how can someone be this stunning? I shook it off quickly, reminding myself I had bigger things to worry about. It was probably just a fleeting distraction, the kind of crush that fades before it even begins. I'd had those before, and they usually vanish with time. But this wasn't the same. With Gabriella, the feeling clung to me like it had found a home. I tried convincing myself it would pass if I kept my head down and focused on my cases. But instead of fading, it grew stronger every day. Every time she walked by, my eyes betrayed me. I'd glance up from my screen without meaning to. It was ridiculous. I was supposed to be laser-focused in a room full of ambitious young professionals, each trying to prove their worth. And yet, there I was, quietly daydreaming about someone who had never spoken to me beyond a polite hi. Somehow, without even trying, Gabriella had taken up space in my thoughts. One Thursday afternoon, buried in case files, I suddenly noticed her walking toward my corner. She hesitated for a second, almost as if unsure whether she should even approach me. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, polite, slightly uncertain, but gentle. She asked if I could help her figure out a tricky clause in a contract draft our boss had assigned. It wasn't something beyond her ability, but she said she'd noticed me working on something similar earlier and thought I could explain it clearly. Her request caught me completely off guard. Until that moment, our exchanges had been no more than quick greetings. And now, here she was, seeking me out. I tried to keep my cool, but inside, my brain scrambled for words that wouldn't sound foolish. I walked her through the details carefully, step by step, making sure she understood. We ended up talking longer than expected. Not just about the contract, but about deadlines, stress, and the overwhelming nature of the workload. It wasn't flirtatious at all, just two people connecting over shared challenges. But for me, it meant everything. After she thanked me and walked away, I sat at my desk in a daze. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just another invisible intern blending into the background. That single conversation made me feel useful, noticed, important. And yet, it also made things much harder. Before, I could tell myself my feelings were shallow, temporary, and would eventually fade. But after actually talking to her, something changed. That moment grew roots inside me, and I couldn't pull them out no matter how hard I tried. Not long after, I got what felt like my lucky break. The firm paired me and Gabriella together on a major project. This wasn't just another case. It was one of those career-defining assignments, the kind that required precision, dedication, and months of grueling work. For me, it was the exact kind of opportunity one had been hoping for since stepping through those doors. I knew that if I wanted any chance of being retained after my internship, this was the project that could make or break me. Working so closely with Gabriella, though, was a double-edged sword. On one hand, I finally had a natural reason to spend time with her, to talk to her without it feeling forced. On the other, I had to constantly remind myself, this was work. I couldn't afford distractions, no matter how strong my feelings were. But being around her made that almost impossible. We worked late into the night on countless occasions, sometimes staying until the janitors started vacuuming. And when the office got too noisy, we'd meet in cafes or even parks to brainstorm ideas. Technically, everything revolved around the project. But deep down, I won't lie, I cherished every single one of those moments. The more time we spent together, the more I got to see past her beauty. She was sharp, confident, and witty, yet never arrogant. Slowly, I started realizing that my favorite part of the project wasn't the work. It was her. Then one afternoon, during a casual coffee-fueled work session, she mentioned her boyfriend. She didn't linger on the topic, didn't even say his name, but the word alone stopped me cold. I forced a smile, hiding my reaction, but inside it felt like someone pressed pause on the world. From that day forward, my mind wouldn't stop spinning. Who was he? Why didn't she ever talk about him in detail? Did he even know how fortunate he was to have her? Because I knew one thing for certain. If I had someone like Gabriella, I wouldn't let a single day pass without making sure she felt valued. But I never said any of that out loud. I respected the boundary, even though deep inside, I believed I could treat her better than whoever this guy was. And that wasn't arrogance. It was observation. I could already sense that she wasn't being loved the way she deserved. I told myself to stay professional, keep it friendly, and not cross any lines. But my feelings kept growing. I'd go home every night promising myself I'd let go, only to show up the next day and fall right back into the same place whenever she smiled or laughed at something I said. It was like gravity I couldn't pull away. Even after the project wrapped up, Gabriella and I didn't just drift apart like most colleagues do. Instead, things between us shifted. We stayed in touch. At first, the conversations were casual. But before long, we were confiding in each other, sharing personal details we hadn't told anyone else. Gabriella began opening up to me little by little. At first, they were small hints, offhand remarks that something in her relationship wasn't quite right. And eventually, she told me the truth. Her boyfriend wasn't good to her. He was distant, emotionally unavailable. The kind of guy who only reached out when it suited him. She admitted she'd spend hours waiting for him to reply to a simple message. She'd cancel her own plans just to fit into his schedule. Most days, she felt like she was walking on eggshells, trying to earn scraps of affection that should have been freely given. Hearing that crushed me. She spoke about it like it was normal, like she'd accepted that love was supposed to feel this way. She would wipe away tears while telling me about the cold replies, the empty promises, and then she'd always end with the same line. But I love him. I'll never forget one evening when I finally asked her straight up, "Why do you keep crying over a guy who clearly doesn't care?" Her answer was a jumble of words, broken and hesitant, until she finally whispered, "Because I love him." I just stared at her, completely baffled. How could she still love someone who made her feel so small? I couldn't understand it then, and I still don't. But what broke me even more was realizing that my feelings for her didn't fade in the face of her pain. They grew. The more I saw her cry, the stronger my urge became to be the one who lifted her back up, who made her feel safe again. I know that might sound twisted, like I was feeding off her vulnerability. But that wasn't it. Watching her break under someone else's neglect made me want to shield her, protect her, be the one constant she could depend on. And I couldn't walk away. I didn't want to. By then, I was already in too deep. And I hated that about myself. Falling harder for someone who wasn't even emotionally available. Then, one evening, everything changed. I got a message from Gabriella saying she had ended things with her boyfriend. I read the words twice to make sure I wasn't imagining them. She was done with him. A quiet relief washed over me. On one level, I was simply glad she had finally freed herself from someone who had been hurting her. But if I'm being brutally honest, there was also a selfish wave of hope rising inside me. I had spent months watching her cry over him, watching her bend and break, just to be noticed. And now, at last, she was free. From that moment, something between us shifted. Gabriella started talking to me more. She laughed more when we were together. She began to let her guard down. We started going out more often, and if anyone had seen us from the outside, they probably would have assumed we were dating. But we weren't, at least not officially. I had become her safe place, and I welcomed it. Still, I stayed cautious. I didn't want to be the rebound, the quick fix for her broken heart. I wanted her to stand on her own again before anything else. So I gave her space. I covered for her at work when she needed a break, listened when she wanted to talk, and respected her silence when she didn't. Through it all, I hoped she'd see that I wasn't there for what she could give me. I was there because I cared. And in the process, my feelings only grew stronger. Every time she leaned her head on my shoulder or sent me a random, "Thank you for being you" message, I let myself believe, just a little, that maybe she was beginning to see me the way I saw her. It took me a long time to gather the courage to confess how I felt. But eventually, I convinced myself that honesty was the least I owed myself. One night, sitting in my car after grabbing dinner together, I finally said it. I turned to her and whispered, "I care about you as more than just a friend." My voice shook, but I needed her to know. I wasn't expecting her to throw her arms around me. I just wanted her to understand how deep this ran for me. But the silence that followed was suffocating. She didn't look at me immediately. Instead, she stared out the window, then down at her hands. After a long pause, she let out a slow breath and said softly, "I don't feel the same. I think we should just be friends." It felt like a door had slammed against my chest. Still, I forced a smile, nodded, and told her, "I understand." I said it for her sake, but deep down I knew something had shifted permanently. That night, I made a quiet promise to myself. I was done playing the role of her emotional safety net when she couldn't give me anything back. So I started to pull away. Slowly, deliberately. I stopped texting first. I stopped calling. I no longer waited outside the office to walk her out, and I didn't check in when she seemed off. The late-night phone calls ended. The lunch breaks together stopped. Eventually, I removed her from my social media. Not as some petty act, but because every time I saw her face or her posts, it tore open a wound I was trying to let heal. At work, we still crossed paths, but now it was reduced to quick, polite greetings. Professional distance, that's what I needed, because I had to protect myself. Love shouldn't be one-sided. Friendship shouldn't feel like emotional labor while your own heart keeps breaking. One quiet evening at the office, long after most people had packed up and left, the usual chatter had faded to nothing but occasional footsteps in the hallway. I was at my desk, finishing a stack of files, when I noticed Gabriella. She stood there for a moment, like she was gathering courage, before finally walking over. Her voice was soft but direct. "Hey, where have you been? I missed talking to you. Why did you block me on all social media?" I looked up at her, took a slow breath, and carefully chose my words so they wouldn't come out bitter. I told her, "You said you only wanted us to be friends. And when I said I understood, I meant it. But what you probably didn't realize is that my understanding also meant stepping back, because what I wanted wasn't what you wanted, and I couldn't keep pretending that didn't matter." She stayed silent, absorbing my words. So I repeated it, slower this time. "Just like I respected your choice, I need you to respect mine." She nodded faintly. Her face carried the heaviness of someone unsure about the choices they'd made. Without another word, she turned and walked away. Not long after that conversation, I heard through co-workers that Gabriella had gotten back together with her ex, the same guy who treated her like she was disposable. I didn't hear it from her directly, of course. By then, we weren't really talking anymore. I won't lie, it stung. I had been the one she leaned on during all those nights he ignored her, the one who listened to her tears and gave her comfort without judgment. I had offered peace, not pressure, and yet, after all that, she still went back to him. But instead of raging with anger or drowning in sadness, something inside me simply switched off. It was like fog lifting. For the first time, I saw the truth clearly. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It was that she didn't know how to recognize something good when it was right in front of her. My feelings didn't just fade, they evaporated. And strangely, I felt lighter. It didn't take long before cracks reappeared in her so-called reconciliation. Things fell apart quickly, but this time it got uglier. It wasn't just emotional neglect I had heard about before. It turned violent. She had to involve the police. She missed days of work. HR had to get involved. I sat at my desk, watching everything unfold like some grim movie. And here's the truth. I didn't even feel sorry for her anymore. Because deep down, I knew I could never lay a hand on someone I loved, not even at my lowest. And yet, That was the man she had chosen. That was the person she had fought to fix things with. She couldn't see the difference between someone who wanted to lift her up and someone who slowly tore her down. And because of that, she kept choosing familiar pain over love she never allowed herself to experience. I refused to be her backup plan. I refused to be her emergency rescue. Every time she ran back into the fire, that chapter was closed. And if I needed final proof that I had done the right thing by walking away, well, that was it. One night, just as I was winding down at home, my phone rang. It was Gabriella. I hesitated before answering, already sensing this wasn't going to be a casual chat. Her voice on the other end was soft but heavy, soaked in tears. She said, "I really need you right now." For a second, the old version of me stirred, the one who would have dropped everything and rushed to her side. But that man no longer existed. I took a breath and replied, "I'm sorry, Gabriella. I can't be that person for you anymore. I'm talking to someone else now. I'm trying to build something new." She went quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered something painfully ironic. "I don't know what I was thinking when I told you we should just be friends. And you never pressured me afterward." She was right. I hadn't pressured her because I respected her choice. I told her gently, "That's all in the past, Gabriella. There's no need to revisit it." I could tell she had expected a different version of me to answer that call, the one who would have driven over at midnight without hesitation. But that man was gone. I told her good night and hung up, and I meant every word. The truth is, I had finally found peace in getting to know someone new. At the office, Gabriella still tries to linger around me sometimes. I notice the way she waits until the hallway is empty before starting small conversations that don't really need to happen. I'm not rude. I greet her, exchange polite words. But that's all. Nothing more. I've even started questioning whether I want to stay at the firm once my internship ends. At one point, this job felt like my dream, but now it doesn't carry the same weight. My priorities have shifted. My peace of mind matters more than any name on a resume. Looking back, I realize something people often misunderstand. Silence isn't cruelty. Sometimes, silence is the last form of respect you can give yourself. When I stopped reaching out to Gabriella, it wasn't to punish her. It wasn't to make her miss me. It was because I finally saw the truth, that constantly showing up for someone who didn't see me the same way was breaking me. And I couldn't keep doing that to myself. You see, when someone tells you, "Let's just be friends," it sounds simple. But if you've already opened your heart to them, what it really means is this: you're good enough for comfort, but not for love. Maybe they don't mean it that way, but that's how it feels. And after everything, after hearing her cry over someone who wouldn't even try, after being there through all her storms, after secretly hoping she might one day see me differently, when she finally said, "Let's just be friends," I knew staying would only shrink me in my own eyes. So I left quietly. I didn't want to be her emotional safety net while she kept chasing someone else. That isn't love. That's being used gently. So when I say silence was my boundary, I mean it was the only way to stop bleeding quietly.